The Darkangel by Meredith and Pierce, Chapter 6, The Riddling Rime. "You must kill the vampire," said the wraiths. One of them, one who could still stand. She paced back and forth along the wall near where Ariel sat, on a low stool spinning. The golden spindle flashed deep yellow in the white lamplight. There were no garments left to make. She merely spun to pass the time. "What do you mean?" said Ariel, spinning a fine golden thread. Though her duties to them were done, she would sit with the wraiths for hours on end now, talking to them, encouraging them to remember themselves and their past, or humming a quiet tune to herself. Whenever she sang, the wraiths grew still to listen, but they were pacing now, those who could stand, or rocking or writhing or uttering little moans. "What makes you think I could kill the vampire?" she asked presently, looking down at her hands. Her words were very soft. "I have already tried and failed." "You looked into his eyes," said one of the wraiths. "A grave mistake," said another. "Now he has you in his thrall." "I cannot kill him," said Ariel. "But he is evil," cried the wraiths, and the others echoed, "Evil, evil." Ariel stopped spinning and laid the spindle in her lap. She felt her heart grow troubled. "I know," she said, "I know that he is evil, but his beauty unmakes me. Every time he looks at me, I die." "So each of us thought," said one of the wraiths, "and he has killed us and stolen our souls, so we cannot die." "I am powerless against him," said Ariel. "If we had our souls back, we could depart to deep heaven," said one of them. Ariel shook her head, frowning. "Your souls are gone. I cannot help you." She took the spindle again, but the thread broke at once, and the golden spool fell to the floor with a bright clink. "He keeps our souls in little vials," said one of the wraiths, creeping closer across the floor. "You have seen them, the little lead vials, the necklace he wears." "I thought," said Ariel, now puzzled, "that vampires drank souls." They do, the wraiths said eagerly. "But he is not a true vampire." "Yet," the wraith beside the first one said, and the others nodded. 14 vials on his leaden chain," said another wraith, the standing one. She bent low over Ariel as the girl sat on her stool. 14 vials, 12 in one, filled with souls, with our souls." "But," said Ariel, "if he does not drink them, why does he keep them?" "He is keeping them for the water witch," the first and others chorused. "For the witch, the witch!" "For a toast to the witch!" shrieked another above the rest. She then fell to the floor, writhing and tearing her hair. The other wraiths tried to comfort her, but there was little they could do, for comfort comes from reaching out of one heart to another, and they had no hearts. "Who is the water witch?" said Ariel, bending over the distraught wraith. "His mother," said the wraith who stood. "His lover," said another. "She lives across the desert," said another still. "Far and a long way away." "In a lake," said the fourth, or perhaps it was the first. Ariel listened now without looking at them. It was impossible to tell which one was speaking. Their fates and their voices were all the same. "They call it the mirror, or the dead lake sometimes. She has 7 sons, and they are all vampires except the youngest, who will be very soon. She has sent them out into the world to prey upon the kingdoms. But this one is not quite a vampire yet," the same hollow voice from a different quarter continued. "She has not taught him all her evils, and he still has his own soul, nor has he tasted another's yet. He has drunk our blood, but not our souls. He is keeping them in the vials which the witch has given him. When all twice 7 of them are full, he will return to the dead lake and give them to the witch as a tribute. Then she will drink our souls, and we shall perish truly. Our souls will not ascend as others do. They will sink into the witch's dark and be nothing." Silence a moment. "Though the death of our souls would end our torment, it would be the Lorelei's triumph. Even we cannot long for that, Ariel. Ariel looked up at the sound of her name. She had told it to them, but they had never used it. She thought they had forgotten it, as they seemed to forget a dozen other things she told them. She had thought they could remember nothing long. "You know my name," she said, and the wraiths nodded. The one who stood before her pulled her features into a grotesque sort of grimace, more like a skull's grinning than a human smile. "We whisper it to ourselves sometimes. When you are gone," she said. "Ariel, we say. Ariel will help us." A sister wraith leaned past her to gaze at Ariel. "Before you came, little one, we wanted only to forget our past, our present suffering, our fate. But you brought us back to ourselves a little," another one said. "Lightened our despair. Some of us can even bear the remembering now in tiny snatches. A few of us," one wraith said softly, "can even remember our names." Ariel's hand went to her throat. She felt as if she were strangling. "Erdogan," she whispered, scanning their withered, wasted faces. Which one of you is the Erdogan?" The wraiths drew back, shifted uneasily, eyed each other with their hollows. "We shall not tell you," one began. "Why?" demanded Ariel. Anger throttled her. "Unless you help us," her sister wraiths hissed and nodded their agreement. Ariel dropped her hand from her throat, sat a long moment gazing at the wraiths. "What would you have me do?" she said lowly. "Steal back our souls for us," they cried. "Return to us our souls." "How can I?" exclaimed Ariel. "How should I get the necklace from him?" "You must kill him," said the wraiths. "I have told you I cannot." "You must," said the wraith who stood by her. "Ariel, you must. How long have you been here?" "A 6-month," said Ariel, feeling a vague dread creep upon her. "Then in another 6 months," said the wraith, "he will bring home a bride. Can you bear it? Can you bear to hear her screams? And we shall scream with her, and the gargoyles. He will make you weave her bridal gown." "Her shroud," broke in another. The first continued, "and to tire her—" "Stop!" cried Ariel. "It drove the other one mad," said the wraith. "She had only been here a year. You will have been here when the time comes. She spun the thread for the bridal gown all day months before the Darkangel flew." "And he paced restlessly through all the rooms in the castle," another one said. "He came to us and cried, 'All my wives, why are all my wives so ugly? I must have a new one. Spin, girl, spin.' She spun it," continued another one, "but it was of pure horror. So sharp it cut her fingers as she spun, a thread of white terror and blood." "And at noon, when the thread was spun," returned the first, "the Icarus flew, and when the girl wove a long scarf, a sari for the bride, well, the sun descended slowly through the star-littered sky, until Sol Star was nearly down, and the cloth done. The vampire came again with his bride." "That would have been Eowyn," cried Ariel, standing, pain and frustration toward her. "Please," she implored them, "tell me which one." The wraiths looked at each other and then at her. They shook their heads. "Help us," they said, and you will know." Ariel stood stupidly, not knowing what to do. "The girl spun the thread," another wraith continued. "Your predecessor." Ariel shook her head to clear it. "She wove the thread," the withered woman told her, "and the Darkangel returned with his bride. The girl washed her and attired her as she was bidden, then brought her to the vampire's chamber as she was bidden. By then Sol Star was down," a wraith that sat at Ariel's feet said. "The land lay dark, the gargoyles beginning to howl, and the little tiring maid ran all over the castle, trying to find some room where the sound could not be heard, and when she could not, she ran down into the caves and stumbled deep into their darkness before the screaming stopped and she found peace." "The Darrow searched long for her," the wraith beside her said. "He told us so," her companion murmured. "Searched for her long and finally found her. convinced her to eat a small something, but she was afraid of the light, and it took him nearly till sunrise to persuade her to come out of the dark into the air of the garden. But no sooner had they gone 20 paces, another broke in, before the sun was up and the durrow bedazzled, and the girl saw the steps she had strayed to so often, and this time she took them, for the durrow could not call her back. "Stop," said Ariel, "stop. You know the ending of the tale." "Yes," gasped Ariel, "yes." "Then you must kill him," said the wraiths, "before others die of him." "I can't," said Ariel, weeping for herself, for Eowyn. "He is too beautiful." "Now," said the wraiths, "well, his soul is still his." "How can such poison be so fair?" cried Ariel. "How can he be both beautiful and evil?" "He is beautiful," said a wraith, "because there is still some little good in him." "Good in him," echoed Ariel. Could that be? The words put a sudden irrational hope in her. "Only a very little," said one of the wraiths, "not enough to matter." "He has been taught not to heed it," and her fellow beside her. "He is evil," said another. "He is still woefully evil." "But there is yet some good in him," Ariel cried. The wraiths muttered amongst themselves, nodding reluctantly. "His soul is still his," said one. "The witch has drunk his blood, but not his soul." "But she will," said another. "When she has drunk our souls, then she will drink his. We shall die utterly. But he will live on after a fashion, for she has left him his heart." "It is lead, not flesh," her sister interjected. "There will be no good left in him then," the one who had spoken formally continued. "And he will grow ugly as we are. No, uglier!" Ariel sank down on the stool again. She could not speak. A wraith on the floor beside her touched her arm. "As now he drinks blood, trying to replenish his bloodlessness, then he will drink souls in effort to fill up his soullessness. In vain. He will become a drinker of souls, and a true vampire." Ariel put one hand to her mouth. She felt stifled. "The water witch will do this to him," she choked. The water witch will do this to him, she choked. "Drink up his soul and make him ugly." Her throat was tight and sore. Pity and anger rose against her again in her suddenly. "No, I cannot let her have him." "Then you must kill him," said the wraiths. "No, I must think on it," she finished lamely. The wraiths gazed at her, hopelessness deepening the hollows of their eyes. Perhaps there is a way to overcome him without his death," stammered Ariel. "It cannot be done," the wraiths replied. "I must try." "He will kill you!" they all cried, miserable. "Then I shall die," she answered. Voice trembling, she trembled. The wraiths turned away from her and started to moan. Ariel will not help us." Ariel sat down on the stool again and said nothing more for a time. She unwound the spindle and looped the thread around her elbow into a skein. The skeining took a long while, for the thread was so fine that many yards could be wound onto that tiny spindle, and all the while the wraiths keened and wrung their hands in despair. Ariel took the skein from her arm, twisted it, and tossed it into the basket, half full already of golden skeins. "I must go down and talk to the Darrow," she said, rising from her stool. The wraiths shrieked and wept in defeat. Ariel left them, and that is where we will pause.